the show and just pull them out.
All right. Well, we're live and in discussion.
Okay.
That looks better than before.
We will have some light here in just a minute. Light it up. Yay!
Okay, that's good.
All right.
All right. So we've been live, folks. Hope you enjoyed that. Welcome, everyone, to Accuracy in America. I am Don Irvine. I am joined at some location that I have not found out yet where Brian McNicoll is.
One of the lesser commonwealths. Commonwealth of Virginia. I'm in Kentucky today.
So is it just you?
Partner commonwealths.
Yeah. Is it just you and Lori, or are the kids there too?
No, we're all here.
Are they? Have
They're
the
all
kids
in the next room, ready to eat breakfast at any time.
Hey, look, that's good.
Or lunch, yeah.
Yes, whatever. Have they started school yet?
No, they don't start till September 8th.
Okay, so
this
is good.
School.
All right, so this is good. All right. Anyway, you got to do your little part of this.
Hello, deplorables, drags, despicables, and dog-faced pony soldiers.
All right, now we're official. Okay, so we have, before we get into all the politicking and new stuff and things like that, just want to briefly have a discussion here about this Hurricane Laura that's coming. They're going to hit Louisiana and Texas, I understand. And I kind of wanted to bring that up because you're from Louisiana, and right. I don't know what part. I don't know if it's going to hit the part that you lived in, or is it going to go into New Orleans? I didn't really pay that much attention. So,
I am from far northwest Louisiana. We're closer to Dallas than we are New Orleans, and so it's about like having hurricanes in Washington, right? We get them, but by the time they get to us, they've died down a little bit. They're more manageable. That's what Shreveport usually gets. But I have a lot of relatives. My sister lives in Baton Rouge. I have cousins and so forth all over the Gulf Coast who are bracing and are really worried. And I have friends who are storm chasers. And, they go out, they go to Oklahoma and chase those tornadoes around, and all that stuff. And a number of them have said that Laura really scares them, that's the type of storm that becomes a huge storm and wreaks a lot of havoc on the coast.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
it's definitely something to keep watching.
Yeah, I mean, it's Category 3 right now, but they said they could go to Category 4. This is nothing to be trifled with. These are going to be winds that are going to be, in the 100-mile-an-hour range, probably?
Yeah, 115 miles an hour. And the thing about it is like, you can get in your house and you can get braced against it and so forth, but you're just sitting there and you don't know when like the thing is going to happen that is a catastrophe, right? So you're just like, okay, I'm probably fine. But if that big tree out in the yard gets uprooted, I'm not fine anymore, right? And then you don't know and you can't stop it and it's too late to do anything about it. And, it's kind of a helpless feeling.
Yeah, so we hope that the people out there are going to be okay with this, because it is, natural disasters, these type of things, this is a part and parcel of our lives depending upon where we live. I mean, you can live in a tornado alley, you can live in the hurricane zone, you can live in an earthquake zone or whatever. Fires that are raging in California. I mean, we have all kinds of natural disasters, but people have got to remember, in my mind, and just in my general thought, is that when these things are coming, why are you sticking around?
Well, I mean, that seems like it seems like the logical thing, right? To move off, right? But most of the time it's really not necessary. Most of the time you're fine to stay at home. And depending on the storm and depending on who you are and what it takes to move, obviously if you're 85, you're trying to figure out a way to stay at home. If you're someone with young kids, you're trying to figure out a way to get out, right? So, I mean, there's a lot that goes into the stay or go decision. And, the thing to remember is these guys this is not their first hurricane. You were talking about the natural disasters. We were in Erie, Pennsylvania last week, and I asked one of the waitresses, like, what's the weather like here? She said, well, last Christmas there were 60 inches of snow on Christmas Day. Like no one even had Christmas dinner because you couldn't do anything, because even in a place like that gets 100 inches of snow or whatever a year, 60 inches at one time is more than they can manage. So
yeah, no, I mean, and that's a good point. Is that just wherever they are? I mean, people, they kind of get used to it, and so they kind of know how to deal with it to a certain extent. But you do get this once. Sometimes you get a once in every 100-year or 1,000-year type of thing that you can't. There's no way to prepare for it because it is just so severe. But if you're living in a low-lying area and things like that, I mean, you kind of have to take measure of what you know, what you've experienced in the past, and kind of just take stock of how this is going to go. And things like that. So I think I'm firmly planted in Maryland for the time being. We have some issues, but not like a lot of other parts of the country.
We don't have that stuff, man.
Yeah.
It uproots your life. I mean, it goes on, the news cycle will move on. By this time next week, we won't be thinking a whole lot about Hurricane Laura, but people down there still will. They'll still be dealing with it.
Right. I mean, well, look, you think about Paradise, California. The town gets wiped out. The news cycle moves on, as you say, but the people there are left with total devastation, and it takes forever, really, for them to rebuild that life. And,
you worked your whole life to build are gone in a flash.
Right. It's just a terrible tragedy. So thoughts and prayers out to all those that are in that danger zone, and hope everything goes well, and we have a absolute minimal loss of life. With this, which kind of hard to avoid. So now we're at 69 days until the election. I noticed that Joe Biden yesterday tweeted it was 70, so he's counting down the days too, hoping that he can slide in there. I think he told David Muir.
Him sleep.
I think he told David Muir he can absolutely win the White House from home or whatever, right, from just staying at home. So I don't know. We'll have to see. So what I want to do here is that when we talked a little bit last week. We only had a couple of days worth or so of the DNC convention. We've now had a couple of days of the Republican National Convention, but now we can do a little bit of compare and contrast what we've seen so far. We've had the 4 days of of what the Democrats did. We've had a couple of days the Republicans did. One thing I do want to say is just how the media had reacted with kind of real-time fact-checking of the Republican convention. That wasn't something they were remotely interested in for the DNC. But I know you have I know you have a lot of thoughts about probably comparison of contrast of DNC to RNC. So go ahead.
Well, it looks like that the RNC one was better coordinated. I think they had a big advantage going second.
Absolutely,
because they got to see some things that did and did not work and change accordingly. What I've read is that the president got seriously involved in the details of this to make sure that it looked like a show. It looks like has the elements of a program that you can follow with a plot and lines of plot and so forth. There are technical aspects that look like the Democrats were stuck on, it looked like one of these, a Zoom meeting, they were sort of in a box and there was no, Kamala Harris speech. I remember she's talking and she's saying things that she's trying to get an emotional reaction out of the crowd. Well, there's no crowd there, and you can't do it. Right. And so the the Republicans done a better job of sort of taking that into account and understanding the ramifications of it, the limitations that it visits on you.
Those are your kids saying, "Hey, what can we do?"
Right, that's right.
But you make an interesting point here, though, about the speeches. I hadn't thought about this until you just mentioned this, but there's a couple of things here, with these conventions. I mean, one is that you have the audience reaction, the festive atmosphere of the conventions, and a lot of times you do kind of craft your speeches to getting certain type of reactions out of the audience. It is actually an interesting thing to be thinking about if you are actually trying to craft a speech, knowing that you're not going to have an immediate audience feedback, and how you do that. How does that really work? When you're doing it, and that. Yeah, you're going to see it'll be on national television or part of it, depending upon who's giving the talk. Which part's going to go prime time versus which parts are not. But there's very different for people sitting at home to react versus people sitting in the very convention hall and reacting. And I think it actually creates a little bit different dynamic when you're writing your speech. If you're writing your speech to still get that audience reaction, I think that's just, I'm not sure that's going to really fly as well.
Right. That's right.
You know, and
hers is like she would pause at moments, where she had obviously worked to get an applause line in, and nothing happens, and then at the end they had the thing where they were trying to they're trying to do like what the NBA has done, where they have fans who they've arranged with ahead of time to applaud on cue essentially. But the Democrat convention, they had a block open for 30 people from New Jersey to applaud or to react, I guess, to Harris's speech. And when it ended, like it was like in a grid. There were like a block of things, and like 4 of them were repeats, right? So it's like they couldn't even find 30 people to do it, right? And 4 of them were used twice. So, I mean, I don't fault them for that. I mean, it's like you don't know what you're up against. You don't know what it's going to take to accomplish something like this. So I think that they did what they could do. It looks like that Biden, he plagiarized himself in his speech. He, dredged up parts of old speeches for this. There is some suspicion that is because they're trying to put him into situations where it jogs his memory, where he's, he doesn't look like he's grasping for thoughts and trying to stay organized, right? Give him something that he's done before, that he's familiar with. But apparently, there's a lot of whispers out there. And I don't know, it's hard to tell, is this Republicans making trouble, and so forth, or if it's really happening. But there's a lot of concern about whether he's mentally fit to do this, right? Whether he not just serve as president, but finish the campaign. So, but he's now officially the nominee. So if they try to move him, it's good. There are some legal questions, and they may not even be able to get on the ballot, because the ballot doesn't say the Democrat nominee. It says, Joseph Robinette Biden. So they're kind of in a box now. They're sort of stuck with it one way or the other.
Yeah, no, and on the Harris thing, I mean, I kind of agree with you about this. I mean, there's no doubt that this was a big technical glitch of some sort that occurred, but I also think at the same point in time, if it had happened to the Republicans, the media would have been all over it. The only thing I saw was on this News Thud site, and I really didn't see it being picked up much elsewhere, maybe in Fox News or something like that. But that story really went nowhere. Whereas I think, had this happened with the RNC, it would have been a completely different type of thing. They would not have excused this as a technical glitch. They would have just, raked them over the coals for this.
Right. There's a lot, like the media coverage of this. If you didn't believe in media bias before these conventions started, you must now, because I mean they ganged up to say how wonderful everything that happened at the Democrat convention was, and how awful everything has been at the Republican convention. And the reactions seem to be differently. On C-SPAN this morning, it was caller after caller after caller red pilling, calling up and saying, I was going to vote Democrat, and I've never called your Republican line before because I'm a Democrat, but, I'm done with this and I'm voting for Trump.
Yeah, I mean, I think I will give the DNC probably the advantage on the roll call, because I think they did a really good job of giving you a feel of the states on the roll call, not as stilted and everything. But other than that, the RNC speeches have been pretty good overall. I mean, Tim Scott was great. I mean, and Nikki Haley always gives a pretty solid speech. And then they brought in some of the rising stars. And they also have is it Vernon Jones, the Democrat legislator from Georgia, with his talk. The Abby Johnson, the former Planned Parenthood director. Melania Trump, and Melania, I mean, look, CNN even praised her talk, because her speech, because she brought up, the issues of COVID-19 and the racial injustice, the protests, that type of thing, which is, I think, what the media has been waiting for, is for some Republican to actually address this issue, which is a good thing that she did that, because it's happening out there. You have to at least mention and address it. And maybe Melania may be one of the most perfect people to do that. She hasn't been a political figure during the last 3.5 years or so of administration. She has tried to forge her own path when she's been out there. And of course, I think you can see the reaction where you have Bette Midler tweeting, "Oh gosh, you still can't speak English." Well, it's like, that is a terrible thing to say. It's like, I'm sorry. It's like, look, you can say some other things about Melania potentially, but to criticize her for that, you're now basically bringing in all immigrants, as far as I'm concerned, who
Right.
struggle with that. I mean, it's like, look, I am the son of an immigrant. I have
What
married
is
an
Bette
immigrant.
Midler famous for? What's she really famous for?
Yeah.
Right? She's famous for her shirt comes down to here, right?
Yeah.
Right. So you can see a lot of like what comes out of her shirt. That's basically what she's known for. Okay. So, I mean, for you to like say that you're better than someone else, I mean, you're basically a soft porn star, right? There's
Right.
nothing, I mean, there's a million people who can sing better than Bette Midler, right? So, when I think about someone like that, and Kathy Griffin, it's always these people who are, off Broadway types, right? The strong stars, they're not that petty because they've got their own game going on. The idea of, comparing themselves to someone like that is kind of beneath them, right? But at these low level, sort of desperate people like her, it's different, Other thing is I want to say about the convention is you're seeing the Jeff Flake has some group Republicans for Biden. There's the Lincoln Project people and so forth. These things. It should be noted who are these people? They are Republicans of circa 1995, right? They looked at the party and they still look at the party the way it was then. And it's not that anymore. It's changed. And the reason that it changed, and this is what's important about it, is because what they were doing was not really wanted by the American people. You could not win elections with it, and people didn't really believe it, right? The right kept asking for real tax cuts, real pro-growth tax cuts, strengthen the military, guard the borders, right? So President Trump comes in and he's like, well, these other things that we're working on, we're not going to work on those because we're going to do tax cuts that really grow the economy, strengthen the military, and guard the border. Okay. So he does that. Republicans everywhere flock to that message because it's what we've been asking for all along, right? And we're not being ignored anymore. We have someone in the White House who heard that message and agrees with it and is trying to enact it. So yeah, Jeff Flake is angry. Jim Leach is angry. This is not their Susan Molinari, Connie Morella. There's a Freudian slip for you.
I know a few people who would agree with you on that one.
So you're looking at this list, right? And you're not seeing the people who really went to war for Republican values ever. They not when they were office and not since. So the people who really do go to war for Republican values, the values that Republicans really hold and the things that are really our priorities, they're over the moon happy with Trump and what has gone on so far in this convention. I can tell you that, I don't know about your Twitter feed, but mine is blown up by people who love what's going on.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the reaction we're seeing is that people really love this whole thing. And to your points here about these guys that are involved, with this, Republicans for Biden type of thing like that. Yeah, I mean, Jeff Flake, people in Arizona don't like him. I mean, they don't. They were happy to see him go. Mickey Edwards. I mean, geez. I mean, when was the last time Mickey Edwards, walked the halls of Congress?
Right.
And things like this. And their positions. I mean, are these people that had kind of started, and Molinari was always more of a moderate anyway, is this part of the party, this kind of more moderate-ish type of, are those people really kind of, are they kind of going extinct? Trump has kind of remade the party in terms of saying, we have to stick to these principles. There are a lot of
Right.
people who don't necessarily like the Trump principles and the Trump redo of the party and everything like that. And that's why you get this kind of a movement going. But are we now at the point where the Republicans, you can kind of really understand, they've got some positions now and there's not really that fuzzy middle, and the Democrats have gone kind of, they're tilting more hard left, and those middle of the road Democrats aren't really going anywhere either. So we've kind of
Right.
got a very we have a contrast, a real contrast. You know what
Right.
you
It's on both sides.
Right.
Like, as you said, like for instance, Biden says, he will end all domestic energy exploration on day one of his presidency. I was assured by a bunch of conservatives that he doesn't really mean that. He means he'll phase out this and that and the other. Conservatives telling me that. And I'm like, I don't know what he meant, but what he said was, it's all done on day one. It's gone on day one. No more domestic energy production in the United States on day one of his presidency. Now, why would you say something like that? Somebody asked him a question and he popped up an answer. But what's important is even Biden, even in his diminished mental capacity, understands that when the hard left asks for something, you pretty much got to say a yes, right? Everything they've asked of him. I mean, he brought in AOC to advise him on energy issues. He has, adopted the Bernie Medicare for all, Green New Deal, all that kind of stuff, because, Biden was, his political orientation for, 50 years now has been as a moderate Democrat, right? He's a Democrat who can work across the aisles. He has these friends, that we keep hearing about on our side and so forth. And that's why, because, the middle is being hollowed out on both sides.
Yeah.
Right. And the people in the middle, they're angry. They don't really understand the changes. They don't really understand where they go, and you'll have a lot of people. It's like, I want a middle party. I would support that. No, you wouldn't, because they're going to have to support a bunch of stuff that you're not for,
Right. So so this kind of reminds me, and I want to ask your opinion about this, which is that didn't Barack Obama during this convention, didn't he actually say at one point during his talk that there's really not much of a difference between Bernie, and Joe?
Right.
Right. So
their whole theme was unity. We're all one.
Yeah.
We're all on the far left.
So what happens to the middle? What happened to that moderate group? If they listen to Barack Obama and he's just basically saying Joe and Bernie are pretty much the same, that probably makes the progressives, the left, going like, hallelujah. But the moderates are like, where's my place?
Right. Well, the other thing about that is like the progressives, a third of the voters, people of color voters on the Democrat side, said they were less likely to vote for the Democrat ticket because Biden chose Harris. Okay. Now, who did they want him to choose? Right. Someone to the left or someone to the right? To the left, right? So the left flank of the Democrat Party still doesn't think it got its candidate, right? As hard as Biden is trying to prove that he is the candidate of the far left of the Democrat Party, they don't believe him, and they probably shouldn't, right? He's got a long record of not being that, right? And Harris, they say he sold out to the centrists, by naming her. We're looking at her, we're saying, hey, she's the most liberal voting member of the Senate. She's first out of the 100 in terms of liberal votes. So, one thing is like, who is Harris really? We tend to look at her one way, other side tends to look at her completely differently. So, yeah. To me, what does that add up to is, hardcore people are not going to vote. They're going to vote for Biden, right? Hardcore leftists, they're going to eat it. They're going to say anything's better than Trump, right? But the enthusiasm for that group is not going to be there. I can tell you, we've been doing this. We're having fun on this trip. We went from DC to Erie, and now we've come across to Indianapolis, and now we're in Kentucky. And we've been keeping count of how many Biden and Trump signs, shirts, bumper stickers, whatever we saw that like indicated a preference for one candidate over the other. Now, we've been in all kinds of jurisdictions, totally liberal, totally conservative, everything in between. Right now, it is 33-9. 33 things of Trump we've seen to 9 for Biden. and 5 of the 9 for Biden were in one neighborhood right by Butler University in Indianapolis. Other than that, other than going, if we hadn't gone to check out Butler University, it would be 33-4. So I mean, that's overwhelming. You know, it's most of the time it's been like 6-1 Trump stuff. Now it's it's not a scientific poll for a lot of reasons. You know, if you're on the road, you're more likely to be conservative, right? If you're out on a highway, you're more likely to be conservative because you have a car, you know, you have a job, right? Those kind of things. So, you know, it's a different, you know, the country out there, and this is a pretty polyglot area that we've gone through. You know, the like stigma of supporting Trump is gone. People are like, oh no, I do it and I don't care. The whole, you know, I don't know how many quiet Trump voters there are anymore. I think they've all said, heck with it. I'm not quiet anymore.
Yeah, that may be the case. I mean, and you know, when you're going through the heartland, I mean, the expectation would be that it would be more Trump than Biden overall, and hopefully more vocal Trump than Biden people overall as well. You know, one of the other things too about the Democrats was just that, you know, what does it say when 25% of the delegates voted against the platform? Were they just thumbing their nose at what was going on there? I mean,
they're caught in this thing. It's like, it's not radical enough for them. You know, I mean, they're saying what they really think. And, you know, what they're upset about is not that it's too close, that's too far from us. It's that it's too close.
I mean, they're still going to vote for the Democrat ticket, I think. But
if they go vote,
if they vote, right? If they vote, I mean, which is,
are you going to crawl out of bed that day to go vote for something where you know what the Republican Party platform is, right? Whatever Trump wants.
Yeah. Well, and that was part of the complaint about the media is that basically, I mean, they're using, you know, they're not going through a whole platform thing like they did before. They're basically saying, you know, our platform will basically be 2016 platform, but it's really whatever Trump does. And the media is like, well, this is, you know, the party's just basically rolled over, played dead to Donald Trump, but he is a standard bearer. He's the president of the United States. Right. He does kind of have the final say on a lot of these things.
And all their electoral hopes hang on him.
Yeah.
If they want to win, they need to the closer you stand, you know, as Jeff Flake, you know, among others proved, Jeff Flake, Bob Corker, and others proved, the closer you stand to Trump, the more successful you will be. So, I mean, they're either, these guys they're all in business for themselves.
Right.
And,
I mean,
you know, there's a reason they're all standing by Trump, and it ain't because of warm personal feelings for him.
Yeah, no, I mean, the thing is too, is that, I mean, out of these people like the Flake types, I mean, how much of this is really, you know, that they really want to support Biden because he thinks he's the guy versus just this ill will and personal animus, you know, the sour grapes towards Donald Trump, right?
That's right. Because he won and they lost in the battle for control of the party. He won. He, you know, you can't argue it. He won, and he should have won because he spoke, you know, he spoke the language of the people you were trying to get to vote for you.
Yeah, you know, and you mentioned briefly the Lincoln Project too. I mean, so, you know, George Conway is going to be stepping back, but Michael Steele, you know, the former lieutenant governor of Maryland, is going to step in there. It's like, well, you know,
it's another example of a guy who was never really all that Republican.
Right. Well, he sold his soul to the, you know, to MSNBC. Yeah, he was not very effective as the head of the Republican National Committee either. And things like
disaster.
That. Yeah. So it's
Montgomery County may not be the place to look for those guys. Tom Perez, he's not really banged it up either.
Well, I mean, but Steele actually from Montgomery County was really from PG County. You know, but still, the thing is that it didn't work. I mean, look, Bob Ehrlich picked Montgomery County. He picked, you know, Mary Kane to run as his running mate for his last campaign, thinking that this would boost his votes in Montgomery County. He just needed a little bit more of a boost to be able to win. And instead, they went backwards. You know, she was totally ineffective. She's a nice person and all this kind of stuff, but she was totally ineffective, and it didn't help him at all. It actually made things worse for him. So, you know, you don't really know, but yeah, I think you take a look at the kind of Republicans that are involved in the never Trumper, anti-Trump, you know, kind of campaigns, and you understand point blank. It's like, yeah, okay, They were
My
never.
lefty friends keep posting these things. How can you go against all these intelligence officials? The intelligence officials prove that Trump is over the target, right? That is the swamp. That is who we elected him to eliminate, right? And that they are all on the outside screaming to get back in and yelling at him shows me that he attacked the right stuff. He did the right thing.
Yeah, and you also mentioned this energy independence thing, and I meant to put it on the list, and I didn't put it on the list, but this is something that I've been kind of curious about, and I want your opinion on, which is, we've had these huge wildfires out in California, and
Somebody
California.
said they were caused by global warming.
Yeah, well, so
Which I
so yeah,
thought there was two things funny about that. One is, it's global warming hasn't been part of this at all, right? California is not unusually hot now or anything like that. The other thing is they use the term global warming, right? They're off of climate change and all that. They're back to global warming. So, that's us winning that argument a little bit. It's like either you prove the globe is warming or you back off, right? You can't prove the globe is warming, then we don't have to do all this other stuff.
Well, what I thought was interesting about all of these stories that I've been reading about what's been happening in California, because one of the things they had like a rolling blackout in the middle of August because they had a power shortage issue. So what California has done, as I understand, is that they have ramped up this big idea that solar and wind are going to power the state as much as possible. And so they've been decommissioning nuclear power plants. They've been trying to get rid of the gas-fired plants as well out there that provide energy.
But a huge renewable portfolio standard.
Right.
So,
right.
A huge rule that says we must get X percent of our power from renewable sources. And that's, it's always going up, right?
Right. They have a target at some point in time where they want to be like 100% or whatever. But as these stories have pointed out, the problem is that, the wind doesn't blow all the time and the sun isn't shining all the time. So
even in California.
Even in California. So they have a problem, particularly in the evening hours, towards the end of the day, evening hours, while the sun sets, is that, solar panels are not going to be generating any kind of electricity. Wind is very, it's variable. You can't count on wind to do a lot. So they've done this, and then they wind up with this issue of like, so if we're trying to do 50, 60, 70%, whatever the figure may be on renewables, but we get to this period of time where everybody is using their electricity, and the grid, the regular grid is only providing this much. The solar, all the renewables are providing this much, and then there's a gap. They apparently reach out to neighboring states for this, but when the neighboring states have got issues, they can't always provide that. So they've got a problem that I think is only going to get worse. Over time, that the more they rely on renewables, the more problems are going to have with this energy gap on the grid, that they won't be able to get all the extra energy from the neighboring states, which are not renewable, right? Which is also another thing. It's like, okay, well, it's
okay to be fossil fuel as long as they do it in Nevada,
Right. We'll take their fossil fuel.
Right. And there was also, the people in Nevada were trying to close coal-fired and gas-fired plants, right? So what if Nevada goes green? What's California going to do then, right? Nevada and Arizona are their backup sources.
Yeah, this is kind of the inconvenient truth, the hidden folly of this is that to the public they say we're going green, we're going to do all these things, but they forget that you cannot do this completely,
until you get to the point where you can store energy. Fossil fuel. Renewables are at about 11% of America's energy source now, and they can't go a whole lot higher until you get where you can store energy, because they don't generate enough, and you have to ultimately get the power, right? You can't hope that it comes later or whatever. You have to actually have the power today to use it. So and in California's case, they just say they cut people off, and like you say, it's the evening. What happens in the evening? People come home from work and they turn on their air conditioned TV, stuff to cook dinner, right?
Wash your clothes.
How long can you just say, okay, you're going to suck it up for our green energy dream, which is no closer to reality than it was when we started?
Yeah, look, I've had solar panels on my house for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years now. I can't remember how long it's been. And so it generates a certain amount of electricity, but I still get, an electric bill, from the local utility. It's cheaper than it was before, but I'm still using in excess because of the hot summer we have here. I still use in excess of the electricity that I'm generating from that I have to go to the grid and still get theirs. So it's not a solution. I mean, when we have 90-degree temperatures here and the high humidity, my wife is still going to crank up the AC as much as I allow her to. So the battle of the thermostat. I've got my phone that I readjust the thermostat to when she's not. I love it. She doesn't watch the program, so I'm safe. but I, if she turns it down too much, I can go back there and pop it up another couple degrees. As long I can keep it going. I'm just not going to go to her level. I go to my level, and stuff like that. But it still is that I cannot rely on solar energy to provide me what I need on my daily basis. It's just not going to happen.
And what you have is the most practical use of it, right? Is, directly on, you're only trying to power one house.
Right.
Right. And you have your own dedicated panels and there's no transmission expense because it's already there with you. And yet, you can't do it. It doesn't work. So, they're until they can store all the power from the sunny days and give it back to us, at night or whatever. The same with the windy days. It's basically decorations. If you pull the production tax credits, if you pull the wind production tax credits, the tax credits people get for investing in wind energy out, right? Because they were allowed to end for 1 year. 92% of the investment in wind energy projects dried up. In other words, private investors are not going to fund this because they know it's a loser unless they know there's a bunch of government money in there to back it up.
Yeah.
It is nothing but a welfare program.
All right, we'll continue to move on. Actually, the other thing too, I had this on here, I was going to ask you about, which is all this stuff about the media and how they're covering the convention. So the big story, or at least one of the things that they're trying to push out, are violations of the Hatch Act. Okay, I'm no constitutional lawyer or whatever like this. The president and vice president are exempt from this because they're the president and vice president. They have to be able to be political as part of their job. But with Pompeo and some of the others, did they cross the line there? To Melania, I mean, is she exempt? On this? And
the Democrats did this. We used to complain about it when they did it, right? They did it throughout the Obama administration, throughout the Clinton administration. Speeches from the White House, Lincoln bedroom traded for campaign contributions. Give me a break. So it's like, and this, the people who want the schools closed, everyone to wear a mask and stay home and nothing to reopen, are the people saying Pompeo ought to have to go somewhere else to give a speech. Come on, guys. It's like, it doesn't pass the smell test.
Well, it's not just that.
It shows you're losing.
I mean, there's two parts of this. I think one is the location. So, I mean, Trump, it's the location, using the White House for that. That's the gripe there for the Democrats. The other side is that Pompeo, he is covered by the Hatch Act, and he's supposed to be there on official business in Jerusalem theoretically. And what's he doing there? Now they say he's on his own time. I think there's a lot of gray areas here. Actually, the interesting thing was when I was listening to the 538 podcast about the convention, one of the people on there says that they thought it would be unwise for the Democrats to press this issue. That this is not an issue that this is not a winning issue for them. So I'm hoping that that's actually going to happen, because I don't really think for the electorate, I don't think people really care that much about.
I don't think people.
This is too much.
I don't think this is not. I'm making all the people in my department vote for Trump.
Right.
Or
this is too much
Trump flags on their desk or whatever. Right.
It's too much in the weeds for the electorate.
It's too much in the weeds, and everybody understands that where things happen has changed dramatically because of the COVID.
All right.
We have school at home now. Things don't take place where they used to take place.
Next thing I want to ask you about is so Joe, the Biden campaign has been struggling with this thing with Linda Sarsour, and they've been trying to denounce her, then they're trying to back off, and they're trying to distance themselves. But it turns out that Kamala she's spoken at Sarsour's March and things like this. I mean, can they legitimately get away from this, or are they just kind of joined at is Linda Sarsour going to be a problem for the campaign to a degree?
I mean, I think it's one of those things. Will it make a whole bunch of people shift and vote for Trump? Probably not.
Yeah.
But it will make people less likely to vote for Biden. If you're Jewish, I mean, how much can you listen to these people trash your people and accuse them of every calumny in the world and go out and vote for them, right? They're not kidding. They mean it. They think you're subhuman scum. That's what they say. And as many times as they've said it, as for as many years as they've said it, you kind of got to take them seriously. And this is they're the Democrats are the party of anti-Semitism. They can't really claim otherwise. I think their best hope now is to eliminate this as an issue, is to get it to quiet down, because there's no winning. I mean, Jews are more integrated in the political system than Muslims are. I mean, just as a raw, what would you get the most votes out of equation, you'd be better off with the Jews on your side than the Muslims. But I mean, it can't come down. This is American politics. We don't hate on people because of their race, right? And if we find out we do, we hold that against you, that you hate people because of their race. So I think, they're trying to paint Trump as a racist. I think, you're seeing less and less talk about that because they can't prove it, especially with their own conduct.
Yeah. And, to me, it's just that, I mean, if supporting Israel is important to you as a voter, I think it's very clear now more than ever that the Republicans, that Trump has got this issue. I mean, the things that he has done during his time have been extremely pro-Israel, and the Democrats have not done good on this at all. Kind of a carryover from the Obama years.
They backed the enemy. They're not they're just not for Israel. They're actively for the enemy, for Iran.
Yeah. So I think that if that's an issue for the voter there, I think that's very clear choices who they go for. All right. Other news, which I thought was interesting, was when Kellyanne Conway said that she was going to leave the White House and they're going to focus on her family, which is great. There are definitely some things. I mean, we have spoken a little bit about just trying to, what the relationship is between Kellyanne and her husband. Yeah, what a dynamic, because when it comes to the politics side, I mean, her husband has been working fiercely against Donald Trump. Kellyanne has been maybe the staunchest defender, and very effective overall, I think, in her time of being that. The media's been trying to rip her up for some of the things that she said, but I think she's going to be missed in the White House as an advisor. I mean, she's been very, very good for Donald Trump, but they also have that problem with their teenage daughter, who's kind of, I mean, she's even made public statements about, disparaging her own father as well as her mother. Right. So I think they do need to address the issues with their own family. So I wish them well on that. But how much effect does this have for Trump, with the remaining time in the campaign?
Could be a lot, because you got to think about what is her background. She's a pollster, right? She came up as, her handle on Twitter is Kellyanne Polls, and so I don't know. I think that part of his, he has had a better understanding of the public than previous presidents. That's one of the keys to his success, is that he really understands what it is people want, right? And he talks about it in the language that they talk and think about it. Okay, all that is a result of things he knows about, public thinking on issues, and a lot of what he knows about public thinking on issues he got from her, right? I mean, he's always been interested in this topic, but she was, she's a savant at like getting that information and getting, parsing out the real questions to ask to get the real polling information. So, could be a big loss to Trump. It could be a pretty significant loss to Trump. But she's a daily communicant, goes to mass every day. Family comes first. And I think that she sees her family, deeply wounded by this, because the actions of her husband, who seems to be a little, I don't know, immature, maybe the best word. It's not really handled this well. And I think that maybe it's time for them to retrench and and take care of family first.
Yeah.
Obviously the daughter has some problems that need to be addressed. And I'm not just saying that because, she opposes the candidate I'm for, but, she seems to be crying out for attention in some sort of unique ways too.
Yeah. I mean, if any of my kids had said, my father has never really paid attention to me, has kind of ignored me and all those things, I would definitely try to fix it. I would be deeply hurt. This would really hurt me, because to have your kids come out and say that, you kind of wonders, like, what have I done, and I've got a lot of work to do here. So,
right.
we're both family men, so we understand this.
My kids wish I would ignore them more.
That's another issue with some of the kids.
We have a good time.
Yeah, you're a great dad. You and Lord do a fabulous job with your kids. I mean, you can tell that by all the trips, all the things that you do. It's wonderful what you do. So be a proud papa there. I testify to that. Nancy Pelosi. Okay, the Republicans, the domestic enemies of the state. Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of hot rhetoric that flies around this time of year, especially in a presidential election year. But that one seems to have made the news, right? That kind of stuck with people. Domestic terrorist, the other party.
Yeah.
I think maybe that, she's getting a little, I think, my theory is that the polling they're looking at is frightening. That they are deeply frightened by the polling, that, what they think is coming in November. And so you're starting to see them like step up stuff, amp up rhetoric to try to, balance some of it out. And I think the Democrats have become fearful, and I think legitimately so, about losing the House. So, I don't know about the Senate. The Senate is more of a heavy lift, but I think they've become convinced they're in real trouble in the House. And I think that's part of it. I don't think it's true, obviously, that Republicans are domestic terrorists or Democrats.
Yeah.
I mean, there's elements within both that you would rather not see. But I think she's overreaching, and I think she knows it, and I think that that it shows that there's some desperation.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that Jim Jordan, Steve Scalise, and these guys, they fired back at her pretty effectively on this, and I think by saying that, I mean, I think someone like Nancy Pelosi just winds up distracting from other things that would be better for them up for the campaign. That this doesn't really serve them well at all.
Right. I mean, who's more likely to vote out because of that statement? Democrats or Republicans? Republicans, right?
Yeah,
I'll show you.
It's one thing. It's one thing when President Trump calls out the media and says things about the media being enemies of American people or something like that, because the media is really just not very popular anyway with most people.
And they're not the government. They're not. They don't have any. We give them some pull over our lives and our decision making, but we do so voluntarily. They can't compel any behavior from us.
Right. They're not elected officials. They're not swearing allegiance on the Constitution or whatever. So, but if you're starting to accuse Republicans, and her targets are obviously elected Republicans in the House and the Senate and things like that, Donald Trump, then I think that's a whole different ball of wax there. And I think that's a big mistake for Nancy Pelosi to go there. Back to one of your things that you are very well versed on, and which is the post office. This fight continues to go on. Postmaster General DeJoy has testified on the Hill, and the thing that it just continues to get to me is like, look, the Democrats are trying to, they continue to try to paint this, and the media has been, going along with this, that this is some election year engineering fraud, try to slow down the absentee / mail-in vote, and cause that to be great chaos. But once again, the post office has lost, $78 billion in the last, 10 or 13 years or whatever it's been.
They lose about $8 billion a year.
Yeah.
They have their own track to lose about $10 billion more this year. And their first class mail volume is down some this year, partially because of the COVID, but their package delivery has been on like 2 weeks before Christmas level for 5 months now. I mean, everybody's just sitting home ordering on Amazon, so it's not that people are not using the post office. It's no threat to the electoral system. DeJoy said all along that they could handle the volume if the states chose to. The problem with mail-in voting is not the post office. The problem is who would receive a ballot in the mail. That's based, at best case scenario, trusting everybody tries to do the right thing, which, you know, is not something that you should really be able to trust. The voting lists are horribly out of date, right? Every time a state goes to cleanse voting rolls, they cleanse 400, 500,000 people, right? The people are on the voting rolls who either are dead or don't live in that address anymore. So now you're gonna have a bunch of people that get 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ballots in the mail. How do you control that? How do you make sure that each person gets to vote only one time, and that you can't mail one in and then still also go to the voting poll in November and vote again in person, right? We're not nearly ready. And there's states that have it, you know, Washington, Colorado, Utah, a few of them have mail-in voting. They're ready for it. You know, go ahead, you guys go mail and vote, do what you always do. But, you know, Illinois is not ready for this. New Jersey is not ready for this. These guys can't have mail-in voting. There's no chance that will be sound and on the up and up, right? You're begging for a corrupt, disputable vote, right? And they want it disputable. They want it ugly because Trump is going to win, and I think they all know that on some level now, and they want to be able to say it was not a legitimate election, just like they did in 2016.
Right, and President Trump has tried to make the distinction. Absentee ballot, you know, something like that you request, that's fine.
Right.
It's the blanket mailing to everybody on the voting rolls. That's the problem.
That's right. And the other thing is, there are two things going on here. One is this complaint about slowing it down for the vote. The other is he is, you know, the labor costs of the post office are a third higher than the labor costs of any other major shipper in the country, FedEx, UPS, any of the rest of them. Okay, so he is saying that's a line item. That's something that's costing us a lot of money. We're stopping overtime. We're stopping, you know, going to the same address 2 or 3 times a day, right? Things that cost us money. We're going to say, hey, put all that mail in the sack the first time. So when the guy goes out and runs his route, you know, he has all your mail for the day, and you get it early, and he gets off on time, and he doesn't work at overtime. Okay. The postal unions are like, hey, we count on overtime, you know, and it's like, you know, we're not here to ensure you get a good living. We're here, we just need our mail delivered, right? And if you won't do it for the agreed amount, then let's get somebody who will, right? But this is example, you know, like the teachers and the school system and so forth, of public sector unions thwarting the will of the American people.
Right. All right. 2 minutes.
2 minutes. So we are still, it looks like college football is going to happen in the conferences where it's going to happen. There's still some backlash amongst the conferences where it's not. I'm in Big Ten country and have seen a lot of opposition to this close. You see, like we were at University of Indiana yesterday, and there were like the drum major people were practicing. Like, what are you practicing for? You have no games, right? You know, so I mean, it's, you know, it is very strange to be on these college campuses because there's always an excitement this time of year about football and all that goes with it and so forth, and it's just not there. And, you know, you know, in our little thing of, you know, counting the Bidens and the Trump stickers and so forth, you know, we saw those it was on houses going into Butler, right? It was a residential area going into Butler where we saw a bunch of Biden signs. No political activity evident at Purdue or Indiana at all. And on the campus of Butler, there was no political activity. So the political activity is the neighborhood adjacent to the school. It wasn't even the school. So, you know, you got to figure that's about 1.5 million votes that go almost all Democrat that aren't out there. No one's telling them who to vote. No one's, you know, there's no campus activism. You know, it just was kind of, you know, perfunctory. So, you know, I think if this election is ignored on America's college campuses, which it could be as a result of, you know, the unifying things that go on, such as football, you know, it's going to be a very different election. And I don't think the Democrats will like what they have done by keeping everything shut down.
All right.
So that decision to, like, see how long they could keep everything shut down, could well cost them the selection.
So I have to ask, so are you hitting college campuses in lieu of hitting minor league ballparks this year? Is that what?
Well, we always hit college campuses and state capitals, but yeah, there's a lot more emphasis on that. And we, like we went to see the minor league ballpark in Indianapolis to see what it looks like.
Yeah, what a sad baseball season in that sense that we missed out on.
Really, and it's it's affecting the teams too, because there's no well of players to draw from, right? You have about 6 or 8. It's like football with the taxi squads, right?
Yeah.
And so the guys you have are not doing well. There's really nothing you can do about it. So you have a lot of pitchers. If you go look at the box scores, because they have the ERAs of the pitchers. There are a lot of pitchers with 14 ERAs, 27 ERAs. There are a lot of batters hitting 104, right? Many more than you would see in a normal major league season at this time. Because they don't really have any options.
Right. I mean, they have that other camp that they can draw from. They can kind of send to shuttle people back and forth. But it's not like these guys have been playing, minor league games and facing a lot of pitching.
They're not in game shape.
Yeah. So it's it's just a crapshoot for them. It's like, well, I need somebody, so I'll pick this person, but you don't really know how this is going to go. It's just it's kind of a crazy season. So all the way around, even with college football, I mean, with the college football championships, well, we'll have the playoffs, and like, well, you've got 2 or 3 conferences playing. It's going to be kind of.
Well, in reality, that's where the champions come from, anyway.
Right, I know, but I mean, what about the polls? You've got Ohio State number 2.
So they are only considered in the first until the season starts.
Okay.
Once the season starts and they're not playing, they will not be considered.
Yeah. So that'll give some people a chance to hit the top 25 that don't normally get there.
That's right. Although it'll be tough because, you can't run up wins on non-conference.
Right.
You got to, every game's a league game.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the rankings for the college football should just be limited to the top 10 or 15 or something, because you just may not
really
have
not 25 who deserve to be ranked.
Right. Anyway.
The other thing is you're having a lot of things in sports that, are never going to happen again. So, everybody's got a big asterisk on whatever they do.
Right. At least hopefully will never, ever happen again. Yeah. I mean, it's just our
lives. And one final thought on that. This is a great time to be bad, right?
Yeah.
To be a terrible team, because, no one's going to notice. Everyone understands how all this came together, and, you've got time to rebuild. And the Orioles are basically their whole season is a tryout, right? You got 60 games to see what these guys could do against major league competition, keep the ones we like and get rid of the ones we don't. So, it's good. It's a great time to not be peaking. Yeah.
I mean, who would have thought that the Orioles would be 500 ball club?
Yeah.
with that group? But yeah, it is exactly right. All right, everyone. Thank you once again for joining us today. Hope you got a lot out of that. Please, as always, stay safe, stay well. Remember that we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anybody tell you otherwise. We're seeing this on display every night this week, I think, to an extent. God bless America. We'll see you again next week. Brian, are you going to be home or?
Yeah, I'll be home by next week.
You'll be home by next week. All right. So we'll see you from your home digs next week. Thanks a lot for joining me. We will, until then, we're done. All right. So where are you off to next?
Boone, North Carolina. We're going to go ride the Teensy Railroad and visit Appalachian State and then start heading home.
Okay.
Beautiful, Western North Carolina in the mountains.
All right. Well, have a great and safe trip. Enjoy it.
All right.
We'll see you. All right. Bye-bye.
All right.